Hey, DeRacers. So my name is Ben. This is Mark. We're on Discord all the time. So I'm not a vampire. And what's yours?
I'm Mr. E at Brood Stables.
All right, perfect. And so this video today is specifically for you if you are new, and if you're asking the question, what do I do? We're hoping to be able to present to you some really beneficial tools and strategies about how you can approach the DeRace ecosystem because it is currently still in beta, but this project is blowing up and there's a lot of complexities in here that for new people might seem a bit daunting, but as you dig into this, I think you're going to find this to be very, very exciting.
Yeah, so we know that if you're new, you're going to be asking a lot of questions. You're going to dive in and you're going to be wondering, what do I do? The first thing that we hear a lot of people ask is, how do I pick a horse?
All right, so if you go to OpenSeas, now we're not going to teach you how to use OpenSeas and how to connect it to a wallet and all that. You could do that on the side, or you could ask people in Discord for more details. But ultimately, when you go into OpenSeas, make sure that you are going to the DeRace horses that's verified. There are a lot of scams out there. One way that you could detect whether or not this is a scam is that when you start to take a look at horses, and if you were to open this in a different link, which I've already done, when you're in here, there is this little button on the top right center or the top right-ish, and it's going to say view on DeRace horses. When you click on this link, it will launch DeRace. And so as it's connected everything through, if you see this, it's going to bring you all the way here. And then if you click on this OpenSeas icon, this is going to bring you right back to the DeRace location. If all of those things are connected, this is the real one. And so before you make those purchases, double check. You want to make sure you don't get scammed because there's a lot of bad people out there, but this is a safe way to double check that. Now, when you do get these horses and you're taking a look at it, there's usually a couple more questions people will ask. Like, for example, what is an Omega? What is a Beta? What is the Gen 0? What is a Gen 1? All those questions are very valid questions, and they all have pros and cons to these things. So starting with tier, those you're going to see the highest level tier, which is a tier 1, which is an Olympian, down to the bottom tier, which is an Omega tier 5. So in order, you got Olympian, you got Demigod, Alpha, Beta, and Omega. Now on the racetracks, they're all the same. None of them are faster or slower. The only difference is I think it's 60% of the horses, all horses are Omega. And do you remember what it is for like Olympian?
I don't know the exact breakdown, but I do know that you're looking at rarity as the main element here
Okay,
when we're talking about the different tiers. It's something small. It's like 2%
perfect.
for Olympian.
So
I know for me personally, I getting into DeRace, I was looking for tier 4. I was grabbing beta horses. That was partly due to budget,
mhm.
which is a major factor, but it was also because I wanted something that was a little more rare than the Omegas. Omegas are everywhere. You'll see them everywhere. And that also means that they're going to breed the most.
Yep. So one of the reasons why we both did that, we're both pretty much all beta horses in our stables, is that there's talks about in the future there's going to be tiered classifications where being an Omega at 5 means you will only be able to compete at Omega tiers. And then anybody that's above that can also go into Omega. So let's say now there's a beta tier. That means no Omega can compete. So 60% of all horses are Omegas. So by going into beta, that means immediately we're only competing with the 40% remainders. So if you have a good beta or if you have a good alpha and you begin to compete in just the alphas and just the beta classes, you might be able to have a stronger position because those Omegas, since there's 60% of them, you're going to have a lot of fast ones out there. The other benefit to the tiered classes is that it's believed that it's going to cost more to go in. So me personally, I don't like the 1 Dirks or 2 Dirks. I want to race at a higher value. So betas, they might come out to be 10 Dirk, 15 Dirk, 20 Dirk someday, which means that it is going to be more expensive to do. But if you have a good horse that is winning, that means your winnings are going to also be up higher. So
Yeah. Now, what's some other considerations? I know for me, I personally wanted to have all thoroughbreds. When the game first came out, I thought that was going to be pretty cool. It's since really not meant anything. There's a little bit of value to owning Appaloosas, but in terms of having mixed breeds versus thoroughbreds, we're not seeing any major difference on the track. But I know there's other considerations. You know, you've got the height of the horse. If you go back to OpenSea, I think you can see
see down
that
here.
all the different properties. Oh, yeah, there you go. Being able to look at what you enjoy in a horse, you can go off of the looks. And all of those properties are listed both in
Mhm.
OpenSea and on the DeRace site.
Yep. Now, none of these will impact the race itself. So these things are all coming down to your own personal preference. And then especially if you want to be a breeder, that's another part of this one, because like I think some horses look cooler than others. And when I breed certain horses together, I get excited to see what they might look like with their offsprings.
Now, that's actually another question that we see a lot in Discord and Telegram and elsewhere, where people are coming in. They've said, how do I pick that horse first? They're going to OpenSea, they're looking around. You're talking about, potential win rates and tiers that they can be in, etc. But another big question that we get is, what am I going to do with my horse at this point?
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a couple of different ways that we see people move toward. Some will use all of them, but what are some of those different things that you can do with your horse?
Yeah. So first, you can be a breeder. So if you want to create new breeds, and you could either sell them, you can race them, you can create your own stable to make your own lineage. This is one of my favorite parts of the game. To me, it's a digital eugenics experiment with horses. So to take two different parents and trying to breed out the superior genes, so that way the next generation is going to be able to compete better. Now, I just said the word generation, so when I scroll back up here, you'll notice that as I'm looking at Peter Pan, below the tier, you're going to see it's generation 1. So that means that this thing has parents in the game. Gen Zeros are all the first ones, and only at this moment, the time of this recording, Gen Zeros are allowed to breed. So if you buy a Gen 1, you're not going to be able to breed it until DeRace creates that ability.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're wanting to be a breeder, you definitely have to buy Gen Zeros. You can also rent horses in the game for breeding perspective, so there's some strategy to that. But if you're going to be turning it into like your main mode of operations, you're probably going to want to have a stallion and a mare, so you just can keep those things going. Now,
That
no,
that actually, if you don't mind, that actually points back to the previous question of how you pick your horse. You also need to pick whether or not you're going to have more than one horse. So when you think about what you're going to be doing with your horses, do you want to have two of them for breeding purposes? That'll help you pick which ones you're going after. You're going to want a mare and a stallion, and they need to both be Gen Zeros. However, like you just mentioned, you can rent for breeding purposes. So there are other horses out there. You are going to pay that fee to rent them out and create a baby foal. But if you are looking to keep that in house and have it yourself, you're going to want to make sure you obviously get a pair.
So now going beyond that one, you could obviously race, because that's what I think the most people do out here. So depending on when you go about the racing, the questions are going to be is, how do I know if my horse is any good? So if your horse has had 0 race experience, so as I look at Peter Pan here, it will show me the win rate down below. I can see it has won 40 out of 395. It's gotten second, 49 out of 395, and third, 33 out of 395. I can look at its racing history. I can scroll down. I can see in the last 10 races, it won 1 first place. I can go back to the next page and I can see that it's gone second twice, first. This might give you some insight to, okay, I see that they're running 10s. They got a first place on 10s. They got 10s again. So obviously the owner of this horse has ran those things regularly. Now, one of the nice benefits is that this community seriously is awesome, and people are all building tools and they're sharing them publicly. We're a part of that group. This is a link of the public tool that we created, and this is using that ID, the 4907. If I go back to Peter Pan and I scroll up to the URL, you'll notice that it says horse/4907. It also says it here next to the name or below the name. So if you're on Discord and you're pursuing or communicating with people, and somebody asks you, what is your horse ID? This is the number they're looking for. With that ID, you could punch it into tools like this, and this is going to show you every single track that horse ran on. We have it conditionally to show red if it was bad, green if it's really good. And just know that horses in this game are not good everywhere. They are going to be good at a handful of spots. So sometimes when new people enter this game, they're hoping they're going to win. But if you're going to, for example, hit dirts a lot, like this guy hit 78 dirts, none of them are really good. That's not necessarily means that this horse is bad. It just might mean that dirt is not its thing. So you're going to need to do testing. You're going to need to move around from dirt to synthetic to turf. They all act differently, and every single horse in this game has different desires of what it prefers to run on. So the other thing to know is on every Monday, DeRace does one Dirk Monday. So it's locked to the cheapest races that you can do. And that's where you see a lot of people will come out and do training or discovery, which is basically scattershotting your horse over every single track to get the data so you can analyze it to find out if it's good or not. So
Yeah.
that's a good place to practice.
Yeah, and you've mentioned breeding, you've mentioned racing. I think another thing that is at times overlooked is purely being playing the passive role, sitting on your NFT, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just owning that NFT, knowing that you're taking part in a project that is growing, and hopefully the value of that horse NFT and other NFTs in the game are going to increase in value over time. But I actually want to mention something um, that prompts another big question that we see. So you're looking for a horse, right? And you want to know what you can do with it. Let's say you've decided I want to race. I want
Mm-hmm.
to be a racer, right? You started to mention that you can use tools like the DeRacers analytics that we've set up here. You can look into your horse and where it's good. But how else can I find out if this horse is actually good and worth pursuing? There's two parts to this. I would ask that question just purely, is it good? And then the second part is, how in the world do I know if it's good if it's never raced?
So if it's never raced, you don't know. And that's a good and bad thing. So especially if you're going to be one of those passive people, when there's a lot of guys in this space that have dozens of horses and they collect them, they flip them, they race them, and an unraced horse or a virgin horse or whatever you want to refer to that thing as, that's can be a higher commodity because nobody knows if this horse is a donkey, which we all refer to as a bad horse, or just an incredible one. So if you buy yourself a Gen Zero, especially a Gen Zero that has never raced before, you don't have to race it. And once a month, you're going to have access to what's called Spin the Wheel. And that is a free game that you can win one Dirk, you can win three Dirk, and then I think you
Mm-hmm.
can win a Liquid Love. So
Mm-hmm.
those, maybe there's a 10 Dirk prize too,
There's a
but
10 Dirk. Yep.
so once a month, you run the chances of getting that. There's also no Dirk. So you might not necessarily win anything. But if you bought yourself a Gen Zero horse that has never ran and you purely don't plan on running it, but you would just like to be a participant in this community, that is also a strategy. It is a surefire way of getting some return on your investment because if you get something that's a slow horse, you might not win very much in the racetracks. This way, you have a chance every single month. And if it's never raced, you might be able to sell it for a similar or a premium because eventually somebody's going to want to run that horse to see if it has the genes that they want to breed. Second, being a Gen Zero, you could put it on the breeding market. And so you could allow people to breed with this horse. But because it has never raced, people might not be as excited about breeding with your horse because they won't know if it's any good. So there's a couple options for you there.
I would actually argue the opposite could be true. I know that people in some of the different discords will ask if someone has an unraced horse because they want to see what happens with breeding. Having that question mark on one side makes for a really fascinating opportunity to sell a unique horse.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Now, this is our stats tool. I'm going to flip over to this one. This is through deracing.org. So they have a great website. And then up in the top, you're going to see stats. We do have competitions. There's racing clubs that have formed. There's seasons in this game, which is awesome. And then when I type in that 4907 and pull up Peter Pan yet again, you're going to see that I have the ability to switch between the different surface types. There's dirt, synthetic, and turf. All of them, each horse runs differently. So it's very important to pay attention to that. And then you could take a look at like the average versus a population average, sort it to find out where does this horse show historically faster than average. And that could be a great indicator that if you do your testing and you want to race this horse more, start there.
Yeah. So if you've used the DeRacers analytics page, if you've used the deracing.org page and you're seeing all of these results, what if you're a stats nerd like us and you want to do it all yourself?
Perfect question. Great segue. So there's more about this inside this community. So I'm going to flip over here to Super Jockey Scraper. So he is a big part of this community. He's built a bot that we both use that works great. So as you start to race, if you want to go that direction, you can. But here you have the option to pick a date range, and this will scrape all race data. So you could start to do your own analysis. This tool is great, but it's almost more of a legacy tool. If you follow him on his Discord page, He does share live API strings, which even if you're not a tech guy, we use it here. It's literally as simple as taking this section of code right here and you'll see import data. That's it. And so this is all public. And if you copy and paste this code into a Google spreadsheet document and then just simply give us an ID, his system will automatically populate all of the data and you could build whatever tools that you want, which we encourage. And if you go onto Discord, whether it's Dark Army, whether it's Super Jockeys, you're going to see people out there contributing ideas, sharing information, sharing studies that they've done. Everybody in this space seems to be really excited about helping each other and figuring out how to make this game turn into more of a competitive sport. So don't be bashful. When people are asking you questions, they're most likely they're trying to help you.
So if your eyes just glazed over looking at the import data formula that you have to use right there, where should people go instead?
So, well, I guess what I would first recommend people do is click on the links that we're providing. If you do not want to build tools, if that's just too much for you, and you just simply want to type in numbers and see it, we'll share links in this thing. But again, go to Discord. You're probably already there if you found this video. So just ask, and people will point you in the right direction.
That's exactly right.
There you go. So then the last two things I wanted to share before we wrap this thing up is that there's often similar questions associated to hippodromes, liquid love potions, and OPs. So just really quickly, because these are less important for people that are brand new, switching over here, these are called liquid loves. You can right now, you can win those on those spin the wheels, but you can also stake dirt directly on DeRacing's website. And then depending on how much you stake, you will get these rewards. So that's one way you can do it, but you have to have a decent amount of dirt to get going, or just go to OpenSeas and you can pick these up. They are required to breed. So you'll have to have a stallion, you have to have a mare, you'll have to have the 50 dirt breeding fee currently, and a liquid love. You do that and you'll get yourself a new foal. And then the last one is whenever you're seeing people, like we use these on our Discord pictures, you're going to see a lot of these. These are called OPs. And now OPs, they have some value, but they're probably going to have a lot more value in the future. So investing in these is a long-term game. So to have an OP, you get access to a specific or a special chat group. And so you get a little bit more information from the DeRace community just a little bit ahead of time. So somewhat helpful. But the things that are more important is each of these OPs also add one spin the wheel per month. So if you have a Gen 0, you get one a month. And if you have an OP, you get one a month. And then in the future, DeRace is going to create a new hippodrome where we race our horses. And I believe it's 10,000 shares and there's going to be 5,000 OPs. So half of the hippodrome is going to be divvied up amongst all owners of these OPs.
That's exactly right. Every OP that you own is considered one of those 5,000. So you have a portion of half of the ownership.
And so currently every single race pays a 5% fee to the house. So that 5% fee go into the DJC hippodrome. It's going to mean that our OPs that we own, we're going to get a small fraction. So this is going to turn into a passive income tool. So right now, they're not that expensive, but there's also no immediate value in these things. So they're a good thing to watch. And if you plan on being around for a long time, this is something I would highly recommend. If you're thinking about just testing this out, you're going to be a short-term player in this thing, maybe not for you, but it's something worth looking into.
And all of you that have finished this video, thanks for watching, and feel free to ask any questions that you might have.
Yeah, good luck out there, guys.